I did notice that when women got married and had children, then there was definitely a glass ceiling, and the employment and promotion opportunities ceased to be as good.
Well, I was born in 1944, just come to the end of the war. And I got married when I was 21. Myself and my husband had 5 children. We had to stay back at home and rear the children. And there was no opportunities. Once you got married, you had to get on with it.
I was born in Rathmines, and when I was 5, we moved up to Columbanus in Milltown. And at the time, that was the foot of the Dublin Mountains, like you're out in the mountains. Nowadays, it's not. So I grew up in Columbanus Road in Milltown, and I went to school in the Marion Hall down in Milltown when I was very young. And we had to walk all the way down to the school, which was about 2 miles for a 5 or 6 year old or that. And then the school opened up beside us, and that was great. So we just went up the road to school. Went there till I was 14.
So I was born on the borders of Clare and Galway in the heart of the Burn. And my earliest childhood memory, when I wasn't yet 4 years old, 1947, was the Arctic blizzards that gripped the west of Ireland for a whole 3 months. Home was a farm. It was idyllic. I remember, my parents milking the cows. I would be feeding the sick lambs from the baby's bottle, hunting, bringing in the sheep. Before I went to school, I milked my 19 goats, and that was, rural Ireland in Ireland. I walked to school, like 2 miles to school through the fields. It was a 2-room school, and we brought the sods of turf, and we learned from enlightened teachers.
Oh, I was very young. I was only 14, and I had to go, and I worked hard. I went into sewing. I was a dressmaker, so I trained as a dressmaker in a small little fashion place, and you had to go in and work. And I was on piecework, so you had to learn how to sew and sew fast to make extra money to bring home to the mammy. Mammy was looking for some of your money, and then you had a few pence left for yourself. And that's what it was like. Getting into the workforce was great because you could earn your own money. And them days, nobody had anything. Not like today. Too much.
Well, I entered when I was 16. I would have liked to go on to a technical college, but my parents needed me to earn some money towards the housekeeping because we came from a large family of 7 children. So, but all my friends were the same, so I didn't mind. And it was enjoyable. I took a job up to help the family towards the household bills. We came from a large family with 7 children. And so we all had to, all my friends, myself, were all in the same situation. It was happy times, but now when you look at the life they have now, totally different.
And I spent 37 years with Primark. I spent 30 years of that as a board member. In Primark, we were known as the Gang of Four, and I was the woman on the team. I was allowed, for example, that I could sit on boards. I sat on public boards, I sat on state boards, and that was with the encouragement of my employer. And it was all about, being a role model for women in the business and allowing women to develop and have a career.
Yes, well, it was all, our lives were centred around the church, the 60s. Sunday was a day of family, went to Mass, and we went to Mass and had a quiet day of rest. And regarding the church collection, we had to give 10% of our salary. No housework on Sundays. And say, they called it, we could serve our work. wasn't allowed on Sundays. Just cooked dinner and just relaxed. I went to church and had a peaceful day.
Back then, we all went to Mass and confession. Now, very few people go to Mass and confession. I don't go to Mass and confession, but I still have my beliefs. I believe there is something out there, but I'm afraid not to believe. You used to go to confession years ago. Now people don't do that because they don't think that now you don't want children, you don't have them. But years ago, you had to listen to the priests. They say go home and do your your duty and have all that. Nowadays, they don't listen. There's, I suppose, they're more educated. Years ago, when a woman when she was getting, the husband was beating her up, she went to the priest to tell the priest what was going on. And the priest told her, go home to her husband and look after him and be a proper wife. He never listened to the wife. The husband could do what he liked, as far as the priest was concerned.
We see the church scandals have made a huge difference in terms of abuse in the institutions. But still, there still is traditional and cultural influence in the church because you have baptisms, you have communions, you have confirmations, you have funerals. When I was going to school, the priest was the pillar of society. The church dominated religion, had a huge influence on education, and also in politics.
So there was a kind of a dark period as well then when we had, of course, the Catholic Church being very, very judgmental and having a lot of control over women's lives. And it was really only from the 1970s and the 1980s that you start to see that change when Ireland starts to open up and become more outward looking again.
Women had no say years ago. Now, with the courts and the judges, they are getting very good at sorting out people's problems.
The women now are more confident because they're educated, and they can go for a career that they want, and they can leave. They can stay in the workforce and get happy with get jobs that they want to do. And there's not much they can't do if they want to, because they get all the help.
Women were downtrodden. The husbands, years ago, I'm going out with my daddy's and mother's age, the men used to drink all the money. They come home sloshed, and the women had to put up with that nonsense. They wouldn't get enough money to feed their kids because the men were in the pubs drinking. That's all gone now. The women are working full time, the men are working full time, so the men are helping in the homes. You wouldn't see a man pushing a pram years ago. No way would a man push a pram or change a baby's nappy.
Improved quite so much. I think generally when you see improvements in gender equality, older women do kind of rise up with that. But actually at the moment, so the generation of women that are now in their 70s and 80s, they're still really suffering the effects of the gender equality from earlier in the life course.
They're equal with men now, and they're going for politics, was never heard of before, and they can be what they want to be.
Years ago, women were not allowed to public houses. They did have a little snug, but you couldn't go in. A woman to go into a pub years ago was frowned on. They didn't go in. So they had a little snug part at the side in the pub, not up to the bar, like a little lounge thing. But it was separated from where all the men were drinking. So the women had to go in there. And they were brazen women that went in there. It wasn't the usual woman that went in. They didn't drink. Now they're making up for it.
So you can see how really from the legalisation of contraception and then right up to repeal the 8th, that's the period when we started to see things changing for Irish women. Attitudes towards women have changed in some ways. I think a lot of the vitriolic kind of misogyny has just moved online. Every generation has its own challenges. So the challenges for women nowadays, yes, they might have more freedom about their sexual choices. They might have freedom about whether they're gay or straight. That's not such a big deal. But sexual assault and rape are still really big problems. If anything, they're worse. We have major problems with people not being able to access security.
A lot of progress has been made, and we have to acknowledge that, but more needs to be done.
So I do think that we have lots of challenges now, and a huge mistake we would make is to say, well, we're post-feminist now, it's fine, everything's sorted. In fact, I think a lot of the problems that exist that if you really want to achieve gender equality, we actually need to look at masculinity. We need to look at how we are bringing up boys. We need to look at what kind of equality of access there is for men and women to benefits when it comes to having children. The more you have a society where men can legitimately, socially, politically, in every way, take time to be active participants in their children's lives, and they are going to be, everybody's going to be better off. That's going to be really important for getting a gender equal society.
And I know there are many groups working and making progress in this area. Workplace discrimination, the enforcement of laws, equal opportunities for women, support for women in work and in their career lives, including work-life balance. Reproductive rights, which were introduced, are very important, but we need to be sure that we have the support services, like the appropriate abortion service, across all the country, just not in the urban areas. Politicians, in terms of political representation, will have at least 30%, like to see that higher for women. And I know there are many groups working and making progress in this area. Workplace discrimination, the enforcement of laws, equal opportunities for women, support for women in work and in their career lives, including work-life balance. Reproductive rights, which were introduced, are very important, but we need to be sure that we have the support services, like the appropriate abortion service, across all the country, just not in the urban areas. Politicians, in terms of political representation, will have at least 30%, like to see that higher for women, to see women more involved in leadership at the political level.
The confidence they have, education, they can reach for what they want to do, and it's a different world. I'm so happy to see that. And Ireland is a great country, and they have great opportunities. And everybody seems to be happy with their lives, to get down with it, with life, and there's nobody suffering like years ago. A totally different world now. People have much more rights, and since we joined the EEC, it's a totally different country, and people have the confidence and they're better educated. So it's a good country to live in.